everybody. This is Perspectives. B, what episode is it? 6?
This is episode 6. Hey,
Episode
everybody.
6. Yes, I'm Audie
And,
C.
and this is B, Brandon.
And we have a guest today,
Yes, we do.
Faye Austin. What up, Faye?
What
Hey,
up?
thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. Okay, everybody. So we know it's been a while. Our last podcast, we talked about West Side Story. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Just to give you a little bit of a history, the three of us went to college together. Faye is another fellow lumberjack. So Axum, there we go, everybody. Faye, you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself, where you live, what's going on?
Yes, I met these two at SFA, and I'm so happy I chose to go there. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and that's where I live now. I love it here so much, so it's just my city. And I've been in theater in one way or another since we graduated college. Feel so lucky to say that. And I am getting married in October to
Yes.
Congratulations.
so exciting to you. And let's see, anything else cool about me? Yeah, I'm kind of an interesting person. I'm an artist / corporate world girl now. So I know we'll talk.
That's perfect. That's what we're going to segue into. So Faye, you and I have known each other. I mean, so Faye and I did keep in touch throughout COVID. We were Zooming regularly, and we had a lot of conversations about you trying to balance being in this corporate world and acting. And I know for a while, just for our listeners, Faye, you did children's theater for a long time.
Yes. My background is, I started in the box office wherever I could get my foot in the door. And I just gradually moved up and eventually got to company management, which I loved. And, throughout all of this, you're like, well, I'm an actress. Let me find time to act. And through Casa Manana, where I worked, I got into touring with children's theater and then got to go on tour with Dallas Children's Theater for a year. So that's my background there.
And Dallas is a big hub for children's theater. I feel like it's pretty well known over there. It's a pretty big deal.
They not only do a full season in education, but then they also do their touring, division, which sends people out not just for 3 months or 2 months, but it's, an 8-month tour, and then they come back and do the show there for a while.
Oh my God, 8 months. Oh my gosh. So
that's a lot.
It is. I was gonna say it's like more than half a year. It's like 4.
But don't you feel like in many ways theater lends itself for allowing you to have a opportunity to work 8 months steadily and have those kind of maybe what we would consider more foundational opportunities, because you can have a career working within the theater versus there is the freelance part in a lot of artistic way, but in this it sounds like it's interesting because we all met each other in college, and it's like, what do you do with a college degree in theater? What do you do with it? How do you apply it?
No, right. I think studying theater in college was definitely prepared me for that, because you're not only learning your degree and earning your degree and going to all of your other classes, but then you're rehearsing at night, and then you're doing any other extracurriculars or social things you want to do. And so I don't think theater students sleep. And that definitely prepares you mentally and physically for being able to tour for 8 months and, be around like-minded people. Was also a plus too, because we're all theater lovers. And so that was an easy part of the trip for me, is being with other artists. You're kind of turned into a family for sure.
So you do this. Is there any part of you that's like, okay, when this 8 months is done, what am I going to do? What's going on in your head as that time is coming to a close? What's happening with you, and what are you feeling? What are you thinking?
That's a great question. The first 3 tours I did were smaller ones. They were 2 to 5 months. And so after that 8-month one, I was definitely at a place where I wanted to take a little break, but not from theater completely, but maybe go back to company management or try to, grow there into maybe associate producing, which is what I ended up getting to do a little later. But that answers your question.
Well, so what I'm trying to like get back to, because I remember us talking about this.
Right.
You just did a show, right? You did a
Yeah.
show at what, the Circle Theater?
No, it was Arts Fort Worth is where I did that
Oh,
show.
okay. So tell us a little bit about Arts Fort. Is it smaller scale, or what? Tell us a
So
little bit about that.
it's kind of a community hub that does, special events, art shows, theater, dance. They do all sort of things, and they produce shows, which is kind of new for them. And so I got to be in a new work, which was written by a playwright from Dallas, and it was called New and Improving. And I had actually taken a break from acting. I had not acted since 2012. I had been involved in theater in other ways, but I had not acted since 2012. So I felt like I was definitely jumping into the water again, and it was very scary in a lot of ways. But the show centered around a group of people who are all seeing the same two therapists, and they all kind of have their own things in life that they're trying to get some help working through. So I play a character who, let's see, she's very impressionable, and she loves horoscopes, and sometimes reaches, and so that's how she bases her whole life. It's just by listening to her psychic and reading horoscopes. And she goes on a date with the central character who's kind of afraid to live life. And so when those two got together, kind of hilarity ensues, and he ends up finding I don't want to give away the end.
So
how old was the character in the story?
Yeah.
Because I have a question that I want to follow up with, but how old was the character?
So in my eyes, and what the playwright and I decided, is she was later 20s, so 27, 28.
So do you find, okay, I've been noticing in a lot of TV shows, there's this thing that if you're going to play high school, you're either a high school student or you're somebody in your early to late 20s. But when you're playing somebody in college, oftentimes the age range starts for somebody that's in their late 20s, that's an actor, or in their 30s. And sometimes there are people like that are in their mid 30s playing college students. And I bring this up because I feel like when we were at school, you were always cast as somebody young. You always, just
Constantly.
because you were
Yep.
small and you had that very ingenue look. And now that you're in your mid 30s, where we're all at in kind of the same age range, do you find that because maybe in some ways, like, I think we had talked about this in school, and I feel like I talked with you about this, and I've talked with other actresses, especially like film actors, that like if you look young, sometimes not going to college is the best thing if you're really wanting to perform in the roles. But sometimes when you do go to school and you have to go through that other route, but it doesn't mean you can't go back to acting, but perhaps like now you're at a point where you can find roles that will reflect you in a different age, but can still give you a wider range, because now you can still play younger, but also older, in a way that they're not typecasting you when you're younger, always as somebody having to be young.
Right. Right. I will tell you something that might make you laugh. And the character description to Abby, who I got to play, one of the first words in her character description was innocent. And that just made me laugh very much, because I actually went into the audition wanting to go for the role that was, the stronger female, the more, loudmouth type of hurricane of a woman, is how the script described her. And so that's the one I went in for, and then when I got in there and I started looking at the breakdown and I saw the word innocent, I kind of knew where I was
where they were going to put you.
Yes. And I do think, Brandon, that there's definitely, my range is a little bit bigger than it was in college, where I think I would feel more comfortable going for roles that are a little bit older. But I think, there's something to be said for knowing your type and knowing where you fit. And when my stage manager found out how old I was, she did not believe me. And that felt like a compliment, not only to, not only to playing the character, but just, so I think that I still, this was my first show in a while, but it is kind of funny that it was like check innocent, because it's that ingenue, like you said.
Yeah, but girl, if you can still play those roles, I would just hold on to that until you can't do it
I'm
anymore.
I to play, Juliet.
I
might still be
mean,
cards.
yeah. And you just said that, and I think what you just said is very telling, knowing your type. And if you're going to sell yourself as an actor and sell yourself as an individual business, you have to know like what you can play, what you can't play. And that's okay. I mean,
Right.
I know
And
people are getting a little more open to it. And yeah, go ahead, B.
well, and I agree, and I think, but isn't knowing your type like, okay, so we're gonna have like a twofold conversation for our viewers where we're gonna talk, because at the end of the day, all three of us have had to take professional careers in order to continue to be artists. And I think when you're an actor, in some ways, knowing your type is one of the most vital things, but it also, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into one singular type. But at the same time, like, I do think it's a weird thing. I think that the umbrella term character actor
Oh
is
God,
actually kind of a negative. I
it
think it
is.
used to be for some people they're like, oh, I'm a character actor. I'm like, but what is a character actor? That's not specific enough, because I think in today's world, especially like when you look at a film, Seth Rogen is a leading man. Whether we agree that he's a typical leading man type, he's a leading man in everything he does. He's always a romantic lead, and he may look burly and be the funny guy. And one could say he's a character actor, but isn't he still a lead actor and he's maybe not a traditional ingenue, but he, in every movie I've ever seen him in like the last 10, 15 years, if he's the lead and he's the love interest, he's always a love interest to somebody else.
Mhm.
And so it's just interesting. It's like, don't limit your type by letting yourself be controlled by saying, oh, I'm a character actor, because
Yeah.
what is a character actor? I think that's a naughty word that you kind of can develop in theater school, especially like when you're working in a company where the roles are going to be administered amongst the actors that are in that pool versus a wider spectrum. So I think knowing your type is really good, but knowing your type isn't actually in many ways the type of character that you play, but knowing as like, what do you look like? What are you? I think theater lends itself for more opportunity to diversify it, but in film, knowing your type is actually like knowing your authenticity in some ways.
Mhm. Mhm. And so Faye, like coming back to it with having a day job, because like B just said, we establish careers so we can still do this. How was your experience with that versus like when you're doing a children's show, this is it. This is like what you do 9 to 5 every single day, blah, blah, blah. But then now that we're older, and B and I just had this conversation the other day, like we, we love to perform, we're artists, but we also need normal stuff. So how do we do both? And how was it for you doing it after all this time with getting engaged, with having a day job? Like, how did you manage and balance it? I'm just curious.
It was interesting when I first got cast. I made sure that I could even do the rehearsal times, which means after the 5 o'clock job. So I was glad to see that the rehearsals were at night. And when I got cast, I kind of had a moment of shock of, can I handle this? Because I'm a marketing director at my day job, and it's very demanding, and it's sometimes I leave and I'm just mentally drained, and I come home and I just want to watch TV. So I was like, can I physically and mentally do this, was my first thought, because also I hadn't done it in a while. So your body's not the same, your voice isn't the same, your stamina
Ooh.
is different. So I definitely had some fears, but after the first week, I think that it was very easy to get back into that routine for me. And it actually made it easier for me to feel like I had a work-life balance, because I had to go to rehearsal at 7. I couldn't come home and answer that email. I couldn't come home and worry about, answering the text I didn't get a chance to enter or, answer during the day. So I feel like it kind of helped me draw some boundaries during that time. And I was tired, but it was totally worth it. Totally worth it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is something you'll continue doing now that you've kind of gotten your feet wet again?
Yes, definitely. If I have got some crazy things going on at work right now that aren't typically part of our workflow. And so I feel like this year I want to get, be able to enjoy the wedding things and focus on these things at work. But next year I'm already like gotta start watching those auditions come on. I definitely want to make it a more of a habit. And it just makes me so happy. It makes me feel more like Faye. And so then I'm doing better work at work, and I'm a better, you know, partner today, and I'm a better friend to my friends because you're doing something you love and it just fills your heart. I don't know if you guys get that when you're performing or in a show, but you're in your element, and so the other part of your life seems richer.
Yeah, I think for me, definitely this last one I did, I felt like I didn't feel the same energy. Like I was more tired than I was used to before. It had been like a good, I guess, like 5, 6 months between shows for me, which I like to take that amount of time, which is good. And also just depends if I'm casting something. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But I think for me, it was just like, oh wow, I don't know. I think I had a moment of like, I don't know how I'm still doing this. And I had to really pause and think about what that meant. Because when I'm in it and I'm on stage, I love it. It's amazing. But that's like what, an hour or two versus however many hours rehearsal. Da, 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 da. So I was just like, and I knew when I took it on, it was going to be an undertaking just because of some stuff I had going on personally. But it was just like, I was proud of myself for being able to put that stuff aside and go on stage. But there's also something to be said for being like, okay, maybe I need to really think about the big picture of stuff. Like you had that moment before, like I'll have it, but I'll think I'll just ignore it. You know what I mean? Like, and some of that's fear of like, oh well, I'm someone's offering me a show. I gotta take it. Like, and do we still have some of that? Like, B, do you still experience that? Like, when we were in school, it's like all we wanted was to get those two main stages or one of those studio hours that we were auditioning for all the time. And yeah,
Yeah, I definitely, I definitely felt I after college, I for my time at SFA, I really only was there for 3 full years. My fourth year, I kind of came into school with the mindset to get the heck out of there. I did not want to spend enough time, and in some ways at 35 now, what's been an interesting mind bender has been reckoning with certain choices that younger Brandon made. That I think he was being guided by a divine force in the sense that my intuition and the things that were just pushing me, I didn't have to think too much. But I'm at a point where I'm like much more self-aware about my choices. So when I make a choice, it feels fully present because I'm no longer just sometimes flying by the seat of my pants. But when I was at school, I got the opportunity to go to Rose Bruford and study for a year in Europe, which is the whole reason why for myself, I came in with credits and I got out as soon as every summer I was working at SFA to get credits and get my BFA finished because I really wanted to get out of there. And in many ways, I don't regret it because the friendships and the learning and the things that I have gained have actually made me a farther better artist and a more well-rounded person. And I can see that where I've gone, the path has been there. But I do think that in some ways, if I had wanted to achieve certain levels of success earlier, I do think going to school, especially if you're trying to work in TV and film, if that's really where you want to go, the value is not going to be actually education. The value is getting out there and going to one of the main hubs. It doesn't mean you need to live there. It doesn't mean you can't survive and do it. But if you're really wanting to work in TV and film, the main hubs of New York and LA are where they go. And sometimes I have struggled since moving out here in my 30s to LA. Do I even have it in me? Do I even care to hustle anymore? Do I care? Like, do I really want this? And it's like sometimes I ask myself, what is it that I want? Because it's like it's not just like there were times in my opportunities in my career where I could have taken the more commercial route and done a commercial film or a short film or something to follow up and gone that route. But I didn't. I focused on no, this is the story. I want to talk about witches. I want to go into my magical stories. And maybe that's more of a specific audience. And sometimes it's worked, and sometimes it has taken a longer path to see the success. And I have to say, it can be challenging, but in some weird way, living out here in LA for myself continues to push me at this point. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to be like a Steven Spielberg type of director. I don't know if I will ever see my success at the level of what he did, because there's certain things he did. But I have to say, living out here, for better or worse, keeps my mind focused on some form of, I got to achieve this thing. And it's hard because I think that, what is that thing? What is that level of success? Is it, for some, it's getting an Oscar. For some, it's getting on a TV show. For some, it's getting your agent and having your career multiply. And I think for myself, it's like, what I know and my value is, everything that I do in my life is to support wanting to tell the stories I want to tell, making that next film or making that next series. And so in many ways at this point, I'm finding work that can support me financially to really support the vision. And it's a different way, because when I got out of school, I moved to New York City, and it was, I didn't really have a plan. I had a plan of like, I'm going to New York and I'm going to pursue acting. And within a year, I really started moving into film. I started production assistanting. I started working in production and got into film. I started making my own short films. And I was like, there was a part of me that was like, damn it, why did I just not do this from the get-go? Like, why did I not just go to film school? And sometimes I have gotten down on myself about it, because I don't know, if I had gone just directly to film school, where would I be upon my path? But what I do know is the type of stories that I tell are so informed from my time studying theater. So in some ways, it keeps me realizing like it's something that I'm drawing upon, but it can be hard and challenging. And the level of success is such an interesting thing. I have to say, I do think that, and this is to get, not to get too far into sexuality, but I do think being a gay man comes with some life observances that I've had to acknowledge that allow me to continue pursuing this without the weight of having to start a family.
Mhm.
And that is a big thing that I think for any artist, I think, especially if you've come from like a cisgender heteronormative like relationship, having a family, whether you choose to have kids or not, finding that it's so influenced, especially we're all from Texas. And so we all come from probably families, like I don't know any Texas family that's not very much in your business. Even I live hundreds of miles, my family is still my business. It's just part of being from Texas. And it's interesting because I do think sometimes living out here keeps me focused on moving towards this goal of making the next project. And that's where I live in the level of what I do, because it's interesting to hear, how you, Faye, decided like marketing, because I know you worked in arts and you did like the touring, but then at some point you made a choice. I'm pretty sure like because if I feel like, isn't it like in the last 2 years, you switched into this marketing position? Is that correct? Or when
Oh,
did you become the marketing director?
no, and it's so crazy when I even hear myself saying that. Um, but it was about 2 years ago, I started working at this company doing social media. And I'd gotten this experience from doing social media for Casa Manana for a little bit. And then at Circle Theater, I did a lot of the marketing and the social media. And so over time, you learn so much. At Casa, I got to help with the ad buying and things like that. So just all this combined knowledge over the years in positions where sometimes a theater, marketing isn't necessarily, some smaller theaters, it's not something they can spend a lot of money on. And so you kind of have to teach yourself. And so that's what I did. I would say over a period of 7 to 8 years, I just kind of thought this is important information to retain, I think. So let me make sure I remember what I'm doing and pay attention. And after I started doing social media and helping with email marketing with this company I'm at now, eventually they were like, no, we need you up at this. And now I have a person working under me, which is so cool. And just, it was unexpected. And I think I use a lot of my theater knowledge in this because presentations, I mean, trying to sound humble, but they don't scare me because I
Yeah,
basically, I
same.
think of it writing a script. And, in-person meetings, I think of it as if I get nervous, which I do, I just think, okay, you're playing a character, Faye, who's a badass, marketing director. So, and just basic day-to-day interpersonal communication. Theater helped so much with that. I think every person, you've got all these, you have to take what theater, what's the class you have to take at SFA, or you can choose to as an elective when you're not a theater major. Which one was that? Do y'all remember?
Theater history, playwriting.
Was it theater history? There's one where you had to take it, and it's like I
Theater
think every
appreciate. I think it's like theater
yes,
appreciation or something.
yeah.
Theater appreciation. Yeah.
I mean, don't make people that's right. Don't make people take theater appreciation. Make people take a class where they're going to have to learn to, you know, in front of somebody or
Yeah.
have a meeting with somebody, because you get out into the real world, you realize that some people just don't obtain those skills. They're great behind a computer, they're great at this task or this task, but when it comes to that in-person communication, I feel like theater people have the upper hand.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because that kind of leads me to the other question I had. Well, there's a couple, but that being said, in the last 2 years, people have been able to avoid in-person things, in-person meetings, seeing people, blah, 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 which is, hey, that's okay. But it's changing a little bit and maybe becoming a little more like, I don't want to say normal, but better. So in deciding how we spend our time and what we want to do with our time, which I think everybody has experienced that coming out of 2020, 2021, it's like, how does that affect us as artists? Like for me, I know it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to say yes to something, I want to make sure it's with a good group of people, a good director. The script, does it have to be great right when I read it? No, because I don't read scripts well. I can reading a script without hearing it. It's like reading a foreign language to me. I do not process it. I don't obtain it. I'm just like, what is what's the line load? What is this character doing? Blah blah blah. And then when I hear it, then I'm like, okay, yeah, I cannot process it if I'm just reading it on paper. But for me, I like to choose projects that are going to involve good people, with people who I want to work with and want to work with again. Like that's something I learned coming out of, which 25-year-old Audie 10 years ago, because I just was so hungry and wanted to make connections and build a community, it didn't matter. I said yes to almost probably some stuff I shouldn't have said yes to. But I think everybody's gone through that. And you get to that point where you can maybe be a little more selective, but it's different for everybody. Like, you're in LA. I don't know what that's like. I never did the LA or New York thing. I don't know. I think I like kind of missed I don't think I wanted to enough to actually do it. So with, so we'll go through Brandon and then Faye, but B, with the place you're in now, and you just said earlier, like, you really have had to ask yourself what this means for you now. So how are you after these 2 years, or where are you at? And then we'll go to Faye.
It's a good question. I think it is. So I do a lot of personal soul searching on that thought of where is the line and what is the line, and as artists, should we even have a line? And I think if you're being creative, the line is your own division of how far you want to push your boundaries as a creative artist. And I think that any person will know that range. But for myself, the best way that I can sum it up is I don't think you have to be successful to be in New York and LA. And I think today's modern world is proving that the communities, it's no longer frowned upon to be a star of your community if that's the level of what you want.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, and this is what I almost in many ways am very thoughtful and thankful of young Brandon in college for not knowing these thoughts back then, because I don't think if I had this self-awareness as I was younger, I don't know if I would still be pursuing my creative path that early on in my life, because I think so much in life makes you cynical against, oh, I mean, when you live in LA, and I've talked to Audie about this, and my partner and I talk about this all the time, you realize how quickly everybody's connected. And you know there's a level of connection in New York City, but the level of connection is so massive in New York. New York is its own level of, there are people literally just famous for being in New York. And it doesn't, like, it's like the same equivalent of, say, Houston or Austin. There are people that only New Yorkers will know that are in the scene. And maybe there's a global scene
Same with
because of
Houston,
social
yeah.
media today, but for the most part, there is enough people that can thrive. But then New York City is a global community. So if you rise past that to a certain level of awareness, you can be seen. LA is different in the sense there are some LA stars, but LA is Hollywood. And when you live in Hollywood, you realize the creme de la creme in LA is to be in the spotlight. Why do you think musicians are here? Why visual artists? Everybody of any type of art form is just here in LA. The only difference is the spotlight for LA is much bigger because the networks are here, the studios are here, so they can prop you up. And you can go to New York and do this stuff, but a lot of it filters back here if you want to do media. And so I think what I've learned is you have to ask yourself, and it doesn't matter if you're young or you're older, what type of artist are you? Where is that line for how far you want to go? And I think for myself, the reason why I keep pursuing whatever this is in LA is, if I had just wanted to stay in Austin, I would have stayed in Austin. If I wanted to just stay in New York, I would have stayed. But there was something that said, you need to be in Hollywood because you're the type of filmmaker that will make it work here for yourself. And it doesn't matter. I think it's the reason why I didn't go to film school. And when I look back at my path, and even when I struggled in theater school, it wasn't that I did bad in theater school, but I thought the way I saw the way I saw plays in theater school were the way I see movies. And had I just known that, I don't even think I would have gone to college. Had I really known that, if I were making short films when I was younger, I would not have gone to school. I would have just moved on and I would have started Production City. And it's so funny the way it's happened, even in living in New York City. I didn't have to go to school. I just found it. And I think film was always where I was going to go. And in some ways, it's brought me here to Hollywood Town because I think it's just part of my path. And I don't know where that ends. I'm up for a job right now that would be in a production gig, but I'm also pursuing writing competitions and as a writer, and I'm trying to get that manager and agent for my writing and directing more projects, and I'm getting a film that's being distributed, and there are things that are moving, and in some weird way it just makes sense living here in this town because I'm in pursuant of that big vision. I think my vision doesn't make it any better than anybody. If your vision is, I really want to be successful in Austin, Texas, there are people like Richard Linklater that can go as far as they want. But you have to know your vision. And I think that for myself, my vision in the last year started getting really small until very recently. And I said, why am I sacrificing my vision? I've never stopped myself. And so I don't know where my line is. All I know is I have to keep pushing toward this level of success that I'm envisioning in my life. And for whatever I reach and how far it goes is out of my hands. And that's how I'm able to continue doing this. And I think that's the best that I can express to you. And then your question is, it's just, you know, how far you want to go in that line. We have some friends, I don't have to say their names, but we had a mutual friend that went to college with us that's no longer pursuing acting. They're in a completely medical field, in a different field. And it's interesting. And I haven't really talked to them, but they seem very fulfilled. And I think that that's what it is you have to fill your cup of what it is. And sadly, nothing fills my cup more than pursuing to make another film. It's still like what makes me tick. It's the thing that gets me up in the morning.
So, Faye, what about you? You have your fiance, I can say that now, fiance. He is And thank you, B. That was a good, thank you. That's good stuff. I know that is not the easiest thing to talk about for any of us, but Faye, you have your fiance is not an onstage artist, but he's technical. So you're a performer, he's tech.
Yep.
That usually is a good that's better than having two actors to have to deal with, but that's just me. So now that you're kind of back into this, do you see yourself doing this day job and then theater when, like you already said, you're looking at auditions and you love Fort Worth, just like I love Houston? Like Brandon, you saying like your community, like there are people you can name in Houston theater that I'm like, oh wow, that person, they're really, and to me, I'm like, I think that's cool. If I could ever be even an ounce of that, for me, I would be happy. But Faye, what does that look like for you?
I think that it's so nice to have a supportive partner, which he is. I think I have a job that also understands what my dream, my other dream is. I think I definitely see myself. I'm an interesting person because there's a side of me that my passion is acting, and that's always what really makes me feel like I'm myself. But there is another side of me that truly loves theater admin. And
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, would you ever go back to that, or what is that working in the admin division? Do they take you seriously as an actor? Do they not? Did it derail from that? Yeah. Sorry,
well, yeah,
tell me about that.
interesting line to walk in some theaters in DFW. If you're on the admin staff at the theater, you might get to do a show there every now and then you get to work on other shows. So that would, I feel like the nonprofit world is definitely where my heart also belongs.
Yeah.
The marketing really fits for me right now. It's teaching me so much more than I realize. And I think it's a really great fit for me, but I do know there's a side of me that loves casting, loves company management, because as an actor, I really feel like I know what those people need, they deserve, and how to stand up for them when that's needed. So there's a side of me that really misses that. But when you're doing that, the downfall is you want to be on stage. So you got to be careful walking that line, because if you don't, like you were saying, Brandon, you got to keep strong to your vision. If you don't keep that vision that, okay, I also want to be on stage, and try to work out that balance. There were some times where I did feel like I backed myself into a corner and said, man, why did I, keep pushing to get promoted here in theater admin when I should have been auditioning, and I had moments being upset about those choices younger Faye made. But I think it's led me to where I'm at now. And it's like you were saying, Brandon, I love when you said sometimes you got to do the job to fund the other things you want to do, so there's no telling where the future can take me now that I've dipped my toe back in and kind of awakened something in myself, not just dramatic, but it really did kind of light that fire again, and that drive and that hustle. And so I think I'm definitely going to keep pursuing it. And maybe it starts off as stuff that works with my job, and then let's see where that, lands.
Well, I have a question for you, Kate. Do you feel that having given yourself time, and when you went back to performance, your performance felt more authentic, and in a different way, you were more present because you were coming at it in a different way? Like, did
You
it
weren't
feel like,
burnt out. You weren't burnt
yeah,
out.
like you were able to get back on the bicycle, regardless of how familiar it might have been for taking the time from 2012 and to when you did your show?
No, that's a good question. It was very emotional, like just, internally. That first night when we went on, there's a scene, I had to do a scene at the very beginning where, she's almost to tears and she's very upset, my character. And there was a couple nights in the performances where I was so amazed that I was on stage again, that there was this part of me that kind of felt like a new part that I never felt, doing shows when I was younger, doing shows, touring. It was like a new life, if that makes sense, or a new kind of layer to my, I don't want to say skills, but a layer to just everything that you put into doing a show or doing a film is different. But, you put in the work auditioning, you put in the rehearsal, you put in the work at home. Um, and something definitely felt different. I will say that. And it was emotional because I didn't know. I had reached a point where, especially with COVID, because when I did my career change, the goal was, let's go be a marketing director and audition.
I
Well,
remember you telling me that. I remember us talking on the phone about it. Yep.
that was my goal. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm making this jump from theater admin, which I'm really scared to do because it's my comfy place right now. I'm going to go do this corporate job, but I'm going to hustle and audition like crazy. I had printed headshots. I had got my repertoire out. And that was about July 2019. And, then we know what 2020 started to look like. And that definitely made me go back in my shell. I know you and I talked a lot about that. I was not really at a place where I felt like I wanted to do a lot of video auditions. So right when people started meeting in person, I personally felt safe and felt like the theater was making safe choices. I just was like, there was something one day that just hit me, and I read the audition and I didn't even question it. I was like, I'm going, I'm doing it. And
Mhm.
I never even had a second doubt, which is so unlike Faye. But it was a definitely different experience, Brandon, than anything before, just because there was that long break. It's like a break from a lover almost, because it's, I mean, it's, people call it the theater bug, and it keeps biting you. And it was like this bug was biting me for what, 5, 6 years, and I wasn't doing it,
Yeah.
on that. I was getting fulfillment from theater. That's the weird thing. I was getting, definitely fulfillment from associate producing or company management, so much fulfillment, but it's a different kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're watching a lot of people audition and go after a role where like, oh, I could do that.
So that little, your brain thinking, why am
Yeah.
I not doing that?
Yeah. And I think when you hear things like that and you get those instincts, you have to listen to them. Like
Yes.
you
And I
have to listen to them.
in that limbo than you think. I think so many people get stuck in that limbo of having a theater job or a production job, Brandon, or something, related to what you want to be doing. Um, and you kind of, I don't want to say get stuck, but you feel fulfilled there, and you kind of get on that track, and then you're like, oh crap, what's the vision? Going back to that.
Well, and if you're good at that job, they're not going to want to look at you as anything else because they're like, oh, but you're so good at the as the associate producer and you're so helpful and maybe next year we'll have you on it. Like it's that kind of stuff. And that sucks because there's those few and far between people that are very lucky to do both. Like it's almost like they have an admin job because they're a company member at this place. Like to me, that's the dream.
Right.
Like, okay, sweet. But if you don't have that connection or that relationship,
Or
yeah,
if you
you're
don't,
most likely. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's
And I
tough.
think and I think the thing is that in this conversation, we keep talking about acting because we all started wanting to be actors in our schooling. That's where it all began, and each one of us, in some ways, still has a connection to it. I may not be pursuing acting as you guys are with your auditioning and doing shows, but as a director, it's like the other side of an actor is the director. So it's one, and acting speaks to me in every film or every production I see. I'm studying acting in a different way. But the reason why I bring that up is it feels like this is the one thing that I wish, and I feel like we had this professor for our viewers. His name was, we'll call him Mr. Kennedy. I'll just call him that. We'll give his first name, Mr. Kennedy. He had a theater speech class, and I don't know if you were in it, Faye. Were you in this one, Audie, with us? He came
I
in. He
wasn't in
just
with y'all. I remember I was a year behind y'all because I was a minor.
yeah. But he came in one day, and he just had to have a 10 to 15 minute conversation about how hard it was to make it, and only 5% of the world's actors ever made it, and what the hell are you doing? And if you really don't have it in you, you should just go. And I remember we all sat there, and some people walked out real pissed off. Some people just like rolled it off their shoulders and were just whatever. And I think I bring this up because being an actor, though it is in many ways the bedrock of storytelling in dramatic arts, it is really 1% of the whole thing. And when you work in professional arts, whether it's film or theater, you do see the world of admin, you see the world of production management, and all the other things, even bigger than just um, technicians and designers and actors. You see marketing. You see, in film is so much more than just the actors, but it all revolves around the actors. And I think what's interesting is for each one of us, it was our way into this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't give it up into some degree. But I think one thing that I've noticed, and I think I want to share this for all of us, and I won't take up too much of our time, but I do hope that if the viewers listen to this, and if you're a young actor that wants to pursue this and you find this conversation interesting, the best thing for you to do is not compare yourself to the stars that you see on the TV. And I say that because I know I did that to myself as an actor for too long, thinking I was not worthy enough as an actor if I'm not a Zendaya, or if I'm not a Timothy Chalamet, or all these things. And you question, you're like, well, why are these younger people getting their careers? How if I'm not acting at this point at the level that they're doing, am I not successful? And this is where I think you may have your vision of what your career is, but then you have to like almost reflect and look at yourself as an artist and say, but was I born? Because if you study each one of those people that I said and you look at their path, a lot of them have family that's already in the industry. And secondly, they all went to art programs at a very early age as children and started performing at acting. And if you want to be in film and TV and you want to be an actor and that's what you think acting is, then you need to have started when you were like 5 years old. That is literally how long it can take an actor just to make the rounds and get seen by all the casting directors, especially out here in LA. It's a system, and the system out here does not care when you started. It just cares when you decided to start pursuing it. And I think with acting, for all three of us, it's like, it's something that we all care about. And I think it's what, like you said earlier, Faye, it felt like going back to a lover because it's a part of you and you can't not do it. But you're an adult, and your path was, if you were meant to have just been an actor, you wouldn't have gone to SFA. You would have been somewhere else. And I think one of the struggles in my 20s was realizing, like, though I want this thing, I had to go a different path to get here. So I shouldn't disregard looking at being a part of other things, because if I can do these other things, you're a much more fuller person in your life. And I think it's one of those things. It's interesting that we talk about it, but I think acting, we all have friends that we know that have struggled pursuing acting outside of school, and it gets them really depressed because acting is a very fickle art form at the same time. It's not just doing the work. Sometimes acting is literally, does that person like the way you look and want to put you in their project?
Yeah, and you're so right. Like that last thing you just said, well, all of it really. And it's so much of that. How do they look and do I? It's like we go into these auditions, and Faye, you've been on the other side of it, so you know. How many videos did you see of someone who was perfectly good and probably could have done a great job, but they were too short, too tall, too blonde? Da, 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 da. I mean, I'm 35 and I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that. And in fact, like, it took me a long time just to learn, like, I don't even get mad. I don't even get, I
Yeah.
think I like, it's just like, I look at this, because I love, like I told, like, I love being on stage. I love it. And thanks to B, he inspired me to try my hand at film. I took an acting for the camera class. Turns out that's not so bad either. But that's that's a journey I have to take to figure out what that looks like for me. And for now, I'm like, no, taking the class is enough. That's good. like, you know, but it's just like, for me, it's like, I just want this to be something else I do in my day. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's like, okay, I have to go to work and then I'm going to go to this audition at 7. Should only last about 15 minutes and I can just leave and everything will be fine. Like, I don't want to put it in like, I'm going to be here all day. Like, in fact, like, if it takes any longer than an hour, I'm like, excuse me, I have like, it's just like, it should just be, it's like, no. And as I got older, it's like, no, if I have to show up here at a certain time, you need to respect my time too. And when I was younger, it was like, no, I'll stay here for 5 hours. It's totally fine. Now it's like, no. And that's how I know, like, and I think that's the place, kind of the next place we have to get to, like those boundaries and all of that. And just be like you just said, so much of it is beyond our control. Like,
Oh man. Well, and then you realize it's not just the way you look, and theaters need to be more diverse, and so they need to be accounting for that in the casting. And but then when you realize what something that blew my mind, and I feel silly saying this, but the contract counts. That is part of the deal. You can only have if they can only have so many equity contracts. If you're non-equity, there's only so many spots for you. And so that's at least in DFW, and I think where you're
in
at.
Houston too,
Yeah.
being equity here is real risky unless you have just like a very
Mhm.
distinct look that people are gonna pay for. So,
It's so sad sometimes because you're looking at a person you want to cast and you've got them in the pile, and then you flip their resume and their equity. You can't. I already hit my limit. So it's wild. It's wild.
yeah, I
That's
mean,
something I known when I was younger because I didn't, And I also think when we were younger, I felt like I had to go to everything to build my resume.
oh, me too. And I'm glad that I did. Like, I mean, you do. There is that point when you start where like you just have to. Every audition is an opportunity to meet somebody, to be seen by someone, blah blah blah. But when I've been seen by the same place 5 6 times, maybe I can skip a year. Okay, I'll go back next year.
And also, we all went after school. We all graduated, what, 2009, basically. I think we all graduated around
Yeah.
that time. I do not blame our professors. They were teaching us a system that they thought we were moving, that was basically the old way of the last 30 years of how things
Yeah.
were doing. And they just were like, yeah, you're going to have more of an internet presence. But they didn't know. They didn't know what the hell the last decade was going to do.
And
to
God
be an
bless
actor
them.
now,
But
yeah. But the last 10 years has changed the game. And that was a hard thing for anybody. It didn't matter what level, whether you were working regional or working in a hub, to try to pursue this path in the last 10 years with the resources that we had. We weren't really prepared in a sense for the type of game shift that it was going to be. I mean, everything is online now. Everything is online now. And the way you approach it and the system, it's not about just like, and I agree, like in the beginning, I used to audition when I was living in New York. I auditioned for Lion King. I auditioned for Spider-Man Into the Dark.
Oh, I love it.
I was doing it all because I was like, I don't know. And now that I live out here in LA, I sometimes get the acting itch. I'm like, I'm actually ready to be, if I wanted to pursue acting and actually get an agent. And if I really wanted to act, I could now know my like type for film and what I could do. And sometimes it gets in the back of my head. I'm like, I shouldn't turn away from that. I should still, I have a degree in it. I have experience. I'm a director. I should look towards acting and living out here. But I think when I was in New York, I didn't know what the hell I was doing as an actor. And I think that that's what helped me kind of isolate myself for a moment. I was like, I don't know what look I had at 23, 24 auditioning. I was auditioning for all the off-Broadway stuff because that was the only way where I knew how to go to Actors Equity and find auditions. But I didn't know how to get the film auditions or TV auditions in New York City because I didn't have the resources. So in some weird way, I just started making my own content. And it then just multiplied. But it's so interesting because I do think we all came out the gate thinking the system was going to be a certain way. And being an actor today is a very different job than what the mindset that it is. I mean, there are people that are getting famous off of TikTok now and getting careers out of this simply for just being young enough to put themselves in front of the camera earlier on.
Yeah.
Brandon, I have friends in LA and they have agents. And I think what I've from hearing, speaking to them, it's pretty standard for your agent to tell you, you have to do this number of Instagram posts a week and you have to do this number of stories a day or something on your, and they have to be focused to this, this, and this. And
Oh
I
my
don't know,
God.
It
at
is.
least
No, yeah.
Brandon, so I'm not certain, but that's what I've heard from some friends, and it's friends that don't necessarily love social media. So they're like, ugh.
Oh my
Which is why,
God.
even though sometimes I miss the acting, I realized I never really, I mean, not that I'm not an actor. It's not, I don't think I'm not an actor. I don't think the type of director I am disregards that I'm still an actor deep down in my heart. But I will say this, the older I get, the more mature I get. I realized like I was always a writer director. That's really what I was, and I was always going to be that type of filmmaker. And regardless of how it took me to get here, whether I didn't have the confidence or not, I am actually thankful because I don't have the mindset to worry about TikTok all the time. And I post probably more frequent than other people, but I don't care to like post like a certain way. If you're an actor out here in LA and your friends are very much right, I have other friends that do the acting out here. It is a system. If you want to be an actor in LA, it's not even about like if you're going to be a television. They want you. No one takes you seriously unless you want to show yourself off. So they expect you to like put yourself out in Instagram and TikTok and all the social media channels, because the more you do that, the more you're giving them exposure that they can then believe that they can market you for some way. And it's a weird business, but I think if you really want to pursue this, if anybody wants to be a performer, you just got to be okay with putting yourself out there, because that's really what it is. And in today's world, it's no longer just on the stage. You're literally, your phone is your stage now. So you have to really want to be very present in front of it in order for this system to believe that they're worthy of putting you in front of a camera.
I mean, that I don't know how I feel exactly about the fact that it's gone in that direction, but it's also not a huge shock to hear. But I mean, I think you do just have to put yourself out there. Just ask Faye. And yeah, B, we talked about it too. Like I hated the idea of a video audition and I wouldn't do it. Like I skipped out on a lot of stuff till I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm like, if they want to put me on stage, they should see me in person. And now I'm like, hey, that's just kind of where the direction's heading. I better just get on board. If I don't get on board, and hey, there might be a date where I can't be there for the in-person audition. So guess what? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, it's not so bad. That took me a lot. Like I had to get over that mentality of like, I don't want to. I don't want to do, because really it's like half the battle's auditioning too and putting yourself out there, like you said. Like, so it's just, if video auditions are what it's gonna be from now on, and it probably is, like with I mean, I mainly have experience in theater, but most what I'm finding now is artistic directors, if they don't have to do the big cattle call with everybody there, they're not going to. And that's okay. I get it. It's probably a lot more convenient to watch a 2 sec. Okay, we can bring these people in. I mean, I get it. And I'm just like, okay, that's something I have to get on board with if I want to be considered for work, you know?
And I think it's the big, I think that here's the fun thing, and this is the thing that I'll say for us, and we've talked about Audie and I'm glad you did the acting for camera class, and I know Faye, you've done some film work as well too. I feel like this is the reason why I love making films, but I think you guys see it with our friends that start up their own theater companies. I think the real key to it all, outside of how far your personal career can be hired by other people, and this is something that SFA gave me, and it's the thing that I cherish, is building a company of people together and making art with your friends. And I think that outside of all the other stuff, because who knows how far you can go, when you get a group of people together and they want to make something together and everybody feels like they have a role in it, it's an amazing feeling. And I do think that some of the things that we see, even like Upright Citizens Brigade or some like of the more interesting production companies that come out in these years, a lot of them are because it's a group of friends finally got together enough to be able to say, no, we're just going to keep making these things, maybe with a little bit of money and hopefully get more money. And that's how I think that's the way you can break the system without having to like follow the traditional way, is being
Yeah,
able to like continue pulling people together. I know, you know, Firecracker Productions
that's what I was
and
gonna say. The last show I did was with Firecracker, which was started by Sammy McManus, Mark McManus, Eddie Edge, like Robert Waldron, you know, a bunch of SFA people and Samantha Walker. And it was an incredibly successful show. And that's because they have kept pushing even throughout the last 2 years. And I gotta say, just seeing how far it's come, I was like, damn.
And
It was pretty cool. They what?
they have good marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just yes, it felt really good to know like I went to school with these people. I know these people. I was here at the beginning. Like I mean, it's exactly you're exactly right. Um and it's
Power,
like how what?
power in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was pretty cool to see everything come full circle, especially for that closing night and just seeing peers, like our peers from the theater community came and some of them had never even heard of Firecracker before and they were like, "Oh, what's this? What is this?" Like that's the best thing you could like having that community like you guys said. It's very powerful because you're just like we're all in this together, we're all creating things together. And I think it's important to support that's the at least that's the great thing about Houston. Everybody, if it's a small hub here. Once you're in, like, and you kind of get to know people and you go to shows and you see people, you meet people, and everybody's just wanting to create and support one another when they can. Um,
I mean, that's the same thing as
yeah,
is in Austin. I have a feeling it's the same way in the DFW area.
with Casa Manana and Circle and all those places. Um, yeah, and I mean, and just think of
Circle.
us back at school. That's what we did at school. We had our community and we just wanted to create and do stuff and it was a completely different time and some of the shows we did, I would never want to go see. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just like it was a different world whenever we were there. Um
I loved that they gave us, you know, I think a lot of schools do this, but it was so great to have the opportunity to be directed by a student or,
oh yeah.
you know, students show. And I loved that part because you're building something on your own, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say though, I don't, you know, I can't if I went into an audition doing what I did in audition techniques, they would be like,
Even slating has changed so much.
God, I know.
Yeah,
They'd be like,
it
what are
is.
you doing? Do you have anything else, please? Yeah, it's just, I mean,
There are
and
things we gained from there that, as you said earlier, Faye, interpersonal communication and building and presenting yourself. It's all there, and it has helped us establish our careers. But it is also one of those things. Like if we were really wanting to have pursued at earlier in our lives a like full on acting career as nonstop, there were other programs. And honestly, I still don't think even going, because I know a bunch of kids when I moved to New York City from NYU and go to the top programs and they don't do anything. It really is, it's so much bigger than what you're going to learn in school. It
it
really
is.
is like, and it doesn't matter whether it's Broadway, off Broadway, movies, TV shows, indie films. It really comes down to like, case in point, Pete Davidson. I love Pete Davidson. I don't care about his comedy. I love that he is a guy when you study like about, he didn't go to college. This is a kid that like at 16 years old decided I'm just going to start going to the stand up bars and I'm just going to go do open sets. He couldn't even drink, but they would let him in and he would be able to hang out there. So much so that by the age 20, he had just been seen so much that Lorne Michaels knew him and offered him an audition. even to the point that Lauren Michaels even told him at the audition, I don't think you're right for this show, but
And
let's
he's
screw
not,
it up.
but yeah, that's
But he said, let's screw it up together. And look at this kid. This kid, because he literally just put himself out there. And he's not the funniest comedian in the world, and he knows that. But he knows what he offers is just his brand of personality. And I'm not saying that that's what is that makes you successful in that world. But if you really want to be in film and TV, if that's really what you really truly want in your life, you're just gonna have to go expose yourself out there. That doesn't mean expose yourself in nudity, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there in whatever capacity, because that level of doing it is the level that anybody wants. If you really want it in today's world, you have to be doing it at that level in order for people to take you seriously and see you, because it is not about how good. And Pete Davidson just had done this like monologue because he left the show, and he'd done that for 8 years. And he even said, he's like, look, I hope if anybody takes anything away from what I had to say, it's not that I am great or good at what I did. I hope you realize anybody can make it on SNL. If somebody like me, and then that's when he went and told the stories like that he wasn't right for it. He knew that he wasn't right for it. But the fact is that he never said no. He just kept allowing himself those opportunities. And I think that is what it is. It doesn't matter if you're an actor, you just can't say no to the opportunity. And sometimes for us, it's like the opportunities came for us not only in pursuing our art, but in administrative, in working professionally, and you also working in with different theater companies and different boards and whatnot. And for myself, starting up independent productions and having to work production as well as working and even working in sales. It's just, you have to not say no to the opportunity. That's my little nugget of wisdom.
yeah. And every opportunity, even though we have these moments where it's like, God, I'm tired and how am I doing this? You have to decide that the opportunity's worth it. And 9 times out of 10, like, it always gets you, it's always another stepping stone, in my opinion. Even if it's like, okay, I learned maybe this isn't the type of content I want to do. And hey, I would love to work with this person again, like maybe on a different script. Like each one, you really do learn a lot about yourself as a performer and the kind of things you want to do and the kind of performer you want to be and where you want your career to go. Like Faye, you just did new works are one of my favorite things to do. They're fun. It's like sometimes they end up going to that next place and you see them fully produced, and then other times it's like they don't go past reading status, but they're always just so interesting to do because you can just play with them as much as you want.
And it's
And that's also
not every episode.
no, you go first, Faye. You go first.
Well, be in the rehearsal room with the playwright, that's pretty cool. Some of us at SFA had to do that, which was so great with Jack Hefner, or James McClure, the great playwrights they would bring in for that playwright festival. But there's something about being in there where they can give notes that come from a playwright and not a director. It's different,
Absolutely.
States of Grace was one of my favorite shows to ever see.
I loved it. For all our listeners, States of Grace, plural, yes, was a play that SFA did a part of their New American Play Festival. We did it every other year. And so we were freshmen, right, Faye, when you did that? Which is a big deal because freshmen didn't get cast a lot. So it was pretty amazing. And it's just, that is one I would love to see in full fruition, like full production, fully staged. It was just so weird and creepy and kind of disturbing, but such good layered roles for women. 3 solid women roles.
Mm-hmm.
That
was great.
My highs at SFA. Getting to work with those 2 actresses, insane. I feel like I learned just as much from them. But yeah, those are 2. I won't say the names, but it was pretty great to, because they had done many shows at SFA, and I would call them very seasoned actresses.
Oh, they were, yeah.
To be a little freshman, and I was the first couple of days so nervous working with them, and then you realize like, oh, I'm working with them. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's also the fun
yeah,
thing, because I think we're getting to a wrapping up point.
yeah, yeah,
But
for sure.
it is cool. Like, that's what's also fun about doing podcasts today. I know it's another form of communication, but it's why Audie and I, this is our 6th episode, and we keep coming back. And this is our first episode where we're going off of reviewing art, and we're talking about creative paths and our different perspectives. And I think, everything you've talked today, which, just first off, thank you, Faye, for being a part of this
Yes,
and
thank you. Thank you.
bringing your insight and your own perspective. It is what's unique, because what I heard a lot of what you were expressing was that you are the star of your own life, Faye, and it's pretty amazing. And we have had some great guests show up, and every person, whether they're pursuing acting or doing something different, we all have a point of view. And in some weird way, I think that even though we're all in different places, each one of us is still our own kind of hero or heroine of our own story, and it's always unique to hear. And it's so thank you for sharing your story, Faye, and just letting us hear a bit of the way you've been balancing your career and what you've been doing the last few years.
Yeah,
No.
thank you. And congratulations on this new journey that you're about to take.
Yes, congrats.
Yes, that's a big, big, big deal. It's gonna be good. And keep us posted about like future auditions, and I'd love to know what monologues you find and what you're doing, and the open calls over there. I mean, I think we can help lean on each other in that way too. So
Yes.
thank you.
Got to get back to our like, should I do this audition talks?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe we'll make a movie together. I've been telling Audie, an idea will brew, and maybe we can get ourselves a little SFA Texas movie together at some point. But we'll invite you again when we have the next topic, and maybe if you have a topic, let us know. And this
Yeah.
is a free form conversation between Audie and I, and we'd love to have you a part of it again.
Yes,
Anytime.
thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, well, that wraps up episode 6, everybody. Please leave your comments. If you have any questions for any of us, don't be shy. You can drop us a line on Facebook. Faye, are you on Instagram as well?
Yep. Instagram, Facebook. Yeah. All the way, Faye.
All the way.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you guys. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
And
Thank you to our
if I
wonderful
don't
guests.
talk to you before your wedding, many blessings on your wedding.
Thank you so much. I love you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.